All right, welcome everybody as we gather to celebrate the first 100 days of the Mike Braun administration. Congratulations, Governor Braun, on a remarkable start. And congratulations to our members of the General Assembly here today as well for a very successful legislative session. Governor Braun's first 100 days have been defined by bold leadership, principled collaboration, and decisive action. Through partnerships with the General Assembly, our statewide elected officials, our congressional delegation, and the Trump administration, he has built a strong foundation for a transformative term, one that positions Indiana as a beacon of conservative leadership for the nation. Governor Braun's path to the governor's office was unconventional. For 35 years, he grew a small business into a national enterprise. He went on to serve his community as a local school board member, as a state representative, and then proceeded to serve Indiana as a U.S. Senator for 6 years, where there was never a dull moment during that term. Between the COVID pandemic, a couple of impeachments, and a lot more, Governor Braun always stayed focused on making sure he was there to serve Hoosiers. And for multiple terms during his time in the U.S. Senate, he was named one of the most effective members of the U.S. Senate and one of the most effective members of the Republican Conference. But he was never afraid to challenge the status quo by calling out his colleagues to tackle the out-of-control spending and debt that will cripple our nation if left unchecked. Through many hard-fought statewide campaigns, he remained steadfast in his principles, unflappable under pressure, and most importantly, had the discipline and relentless drive to keep on winning. And we're not tired of winning yet, Governor. What sets Governor Braun apart is his deep connection to Hoosiers. Whether through his annual 92 county tour, Hoosier huddles at the State House, or open Friday meetings in Jasper, he listens to the people. He embodies the common sense pragmatism and real-world experience our founders knew was essential for self-government to succeed. His leadership reflects Indiana's values of hard work, integrity, and service. Governor Braun has always made sure that our team knows that constituent service, as he calls it, customer service, is our #1 priority. As we mark these first 100 days, let's look forward to a term that delivers results, protects our freedoms, expands opportunities, and makes Indiana a model for the nation. Now I'm honored to welcome to the podium one of our great partners from the General Assembly who represents State Senate District 31, where we stand today, State Senator Kyle Walker.
Well, good afternoon, and thanks for being here. We're actually just outside of State Senate District 31, but this is my hometown, the city of Lawrence, so welcome here. And, I just wanted to say a couple of things. Mike Braun is no stranger to any of you, businessman, public servant, now our governor. And as our governor, I think what we witnessed in the first 100 days is he truly understands how to roll up his sleeves and get to work. And he's focused on meaningful issues like, cutting property taxes, controlling healthcare prices, investing in our infrastructure, and making government more accountable and transparent. And I think we can all agree that those are important issues that we all need to tackle. And I can tell you from my perspective in the legislature, I've appreciated their openness and their collaboration because, we've got 150 of us, and there's one governor, and so it takes a lot of work to talk to all of us and kind of build a consensus that we can come to an agreement on, which I think we were successful at this year. And so I want to thank you, Governor Braun, for that. With that, I'd like to introduce our Secretary of Energy and Natural Resources, Susie Jaworowski.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you so much, Governor. Thanks for having me here this afternoon. I do serve as the Secretary of Energy and Natural Resources on behalf of the Governor, and I was asked to come here today and talk about my experience and our experience as a cabinet, being the first ever as a secretarial cabinet on behalf of the Governor of the state of Indiana. The Governor very wisely put together a cabinet of 8 people to oversee 57 different agencies. Therefore, there are 8 representatives on his behalf for all those agencies. And the thing that we all found we had in common when we first came together is that we all had some experience in an entrepreneurial way. We had some experience understanding government and understanding our verticals in the areas that we worked in. And so we shared that entrepreneurial spirit, that spirit of patriotism. And what I've heard so far from the 3 constituencies that we serve on behalf of the governor is that our agencies are getting better attention from the governor's office and have more in-depth experience there and able to contact him, a representative of him. We're hearing from the state legislature how much they appreciate our participating in their process and being a sounding board and a voice for the governor on his behalf in the legislature. And then most importantly for everyday Hoosiers and the challenges that they face. And they can come and have a representative in their area that they're interested in on behalf of the governor. And when necessary, we can elevate that directly to the governor, and it's a direct path. And so we're hearing great positive things about the secretarial cabinet. And then also I was asked just to talk about my experience in working for the governor, and I'll say he's a man of the people. He truly is somebody who's unafraid to stand up for everyday Hoosiers and what their needs are. We've experienced that through the legislative and budget process that we just went through with our budget situation and the agencies. Instead of finding ways to plug holes with additional resources, we were absolutely encouraged to streamline, better organize, and cut through red tape. And that is exactly what we've done on behalf of Governor Braun. So thank you for your leadership there, sir. Now it's my honor to introduce our representative from this area, Chris Judy.
Thank you all for being here today. It's a great honor to stand here before you. 10 years ago at this time, then Representative Braun and I were finishing up our first legislative session together. And not knowing 10 years later we'd be standing here and he would be a future governor, now our future senator, now our future governor. So he hasn't disappointed. When we were sitting around one day, it was Representative Morrison and Morris and myself. You stated you had a vision of running for a higher office and going to D.C. You had a vision and a plan. You executed it. So I think my wife and I were out in D.C. a few years back. You said you were going to run for governor. You had a plan, and you've executed it this session. It's been an honor to work with your staff. You've put a bunch of talented folks around you. You've brought transparency and accountability to state government. You have brought communication to the third floor that I haven't seen in my time here. And I think my colleagues have been very appreciative of that, and your team, and the accessibility that you have. So with that, I thank you, and it's an honor to introduce my friend, Governor Braun.
What a pleasure to be here after 100 days. Love it when you get introduced as unconventional. So, you know, it's funny when you think back and how you end up here and you put a team together like we were able to take out the DC. I remember then I might have told Chris and Morris and a few others, Alan, that maybe I was going to do something other than come back and run for a third term in the State House. I had to drift back mostly to the navigation that got you there, you know, from the beginning, and that was making decisions, taking risk, which I always talk about, because if you're not doing that measured and making sure you mitigate it along the way, you're probably not going to be able to check off some of those milestones that you may eventually arrive at, because it's always a journey that involves other people. I relate it back to those early days in running a business. When thought was going to head to Wall Street, you moved back to your hometown, a lot of people were scratching their head, why did you do it? And there, you got to develop, I think, that sense of judgment along with taking risks, because they both go hand in hand. And I think about how long that took to play out. And I look at how quickly the second act of my life, you know, being in politics and government, kind of have fallen in place. Never to the extent I imagined back working in the Youth for Lugar campaign in '74 when he took on Birch Bayh and lost, and then won 2 years later against Vance Hartke. So all that comes together, and when you do arrive at those turning points in life, picking that right fork in the road, I look at our state legislature and compare it to the place I was the last 6 years. I mean, we just completed in 3.5 months, I don't know how many bills actually came to the forefront, but it was about the same as what it was 10 years ago. And you dispatch with them and you move your state ahead in the right direction. And I look at comparing that to what we're wrestling with currently in that place that I spent 6 years. We've got someone there, I think, that has given us our best chance of actually changing the system. And that's why it's been an honor to be literally the first call from the presidents of the United States, his office, on wanting to make America great again. Well, when we were talking about a passion of mine from the time I fixed it back in my own business 17 years ago, healthcare, who do we get into our own state? The folks that represent that in D.C. That's an honor to our state. It was an honor to be part of that out there. And now we're leading with a legislature that's doing what would be the best gift to our state of Indiana, and that is fixing a broken healthcare system. And you can see the wrestling match we had, getting through this session. Wrestling matches, to me, are joyful experiences. Would any of you agree with that? I don't know, Kyle, if you would or not. But when you do navigate through life by making it something you look forward to each day, you can check off a lot of accomplishments and not be taken down by the process through which you've got to go through. So here in those 6 years that I spent out in D.C., it was so different from the dynamic we've got in our own state. I mean, we did this in 3.5 months. By the way, we did it with a solid financial position, believing in reserves, believing in the idea of a rainy day fund, and not even having a capability of borrowing money from our kids and grandkids. So what we're a part of, and the reason I chose to come back and give up a Senate seat, again, unconventional. Most people don't do it. They were wondering why. And now I find some of my friends in the U.S. Senate are giving thought to that. Not that I'm saying it's a trend-setting way of going to D.C., but I think you're going to find that many will go there and never had a chance unless you've got a Josh Kelly, a Jason Johnson, a Katie Bailey that enabled me to be able to become an effective senator. It's part of being a good leader and manager in knowing how to bring people along with you. So I viewed that as something that would have been very easy to do another 6 years, but what were you going to accomplish marginally? You're not going to be probably the most effective second-term senator and touted for it. I knew the system, but the blessings of having that place going through its own transformation right in front of our eyes, in being a state that generally isn't considered with a Florida and a Texas, now is getting touted as a place to keep an eye on, because as a legislature, most of whom, at least the committee chairs, has changed somewhat. I served with 15, 16, and 17. Look at the big issue that I heard from Hoosiers traveling around the state, which I'll do in these remaining 3.5 years to maybe 7.5 years. Talk to the people, they'll tell you. And if you listen, you're going to be creating all the input you need to make sure that you're then getting through our own legislature things that are meaningful to the people. When you look at property taxes, by far the biggest thing I heard about. We went from one version to a different version, and then the meat grinder of legislation took over. And look at the product that we turned out. When you're pissing off people on each end of the spectrum, and most in between say that it was a solid package, and don't ever rest upon your laurels. When there's a big issue out there, that means that there may be more work to do. When you look at the agenda items, like healthcare, to me, when we sport some of the highest costs in the country with some of the poorest outcomes, that's a no-brainer. There's one problem. That's the strongest lobby in the state and in the country. And when you've evolved into something that's good for you and basically not good for the people you're selling your services to, that's not going to be an easy thing to change. But we did an amazing job of getting agenda bills done there that's putting that place on notice. Start finding out how to fix yourselves, or there's going to be more legislative pressure to get yourself acting like almost all other businesses do, where they embrace competition. They don't want to create barriers to entry. They've got engaged consumers. We're going to get all that done. Education, the thing that we spend the most money on, that doesn't mean you're not going to find new ways to do it or try to get more value out of it. So when I look at these first 100 days, I view it as a celebration that we made that much headway. And when you are getting referenced to maybe 20 years ago, when, think about it, we were a purple-red state, in the red financially, and when you're pissing off people through the BMV, everybody's in a bad mood. And what did he do? He fixed it. He turned around our financial situation. We've all been blessed with some of those results. Again, I said earlier, don't rest upon your laurels. So we got a lot done. Thank you to all the legislators out there. I don't want to not mention the easiest thing to do, which was talked about many times in the past. Create an executive branch that's going to listen to the customer. And I can tell you, when you've got 30 small agencies, 30 large ones, and you've got only one small aperture to get good ideas up through, you're not going to get much done. I was so happy to be able to do it and create 8 silos along with Superintendent of Police and TAG, and create an atmosphere that's going to get information flowing like a geyser up to my desk. And many of you that are the new cabinet members are already getting emails from me. You know why I'm sending them to you? Because they've come from the people. I still encourage, and for people that have good ideas, which I want to hear them, they're going to bring them to me. But now you've got 8 entrepreneurial cabinet heads that should be able to do it, and in case it doesn't get there, you can still bring it to me or anyone else because we want to hear it. In building my business, I never paid money to consultants. You know what I did? I got the cranky salesman together with the cranky customer, put the customer on the speakerphone, and then I just let free consulting work its way into a solution. And you can't get rid of those basic elements that work. So freedom and opportunity is what I ran on, based it upon faith, family, and community. And sometimes that's the part that chokes me up. Because when you're blessed, like I've been blessed, to come from a foundation of faith, family, and community, and know that those are the people that got you there in the first place, and that they've stuck with you through this entire journey that was nothing conventional about it. And that is how you change things from a place that you might consider being pretty good to making it really good, if not great. So I thank all of you that have been along for the journey. especially the ones that were willing to follow me out to D.C., and then most of you coming back, and not to mention someone, Katie Bailey, who I met through Senator Tom Coburn when I first started looking at the Senate. She was our legislative director. She'll be listening to this, and she is our liaison in D.C. So we got all of the elements for this to be a wonderful opening act. We're not going to rest upon our laurels. Get ready for the texts and the emails. Get them coming to us, the great ideas. We'll look at the ones that make sense, get them into this next legislative session, and I can't wait to see what we can accomplish together. Buckle up. I'm looking forward to the journey. Thank you so much.